Welcome back. Now, a bit of bad news, but we have to talk about it all the same. The Automobile Association, that's the AA, say that South Africans should brace themselves for a steep increase in the fuel prices at the end of March. Now, according to the AA, petrol is set to increase by 90 cents per litre and diesel will increase by 66 cents, while illuminating paraffin is expected to go up by 62 cents per litre. The hike in fuel prices does not include the additional 26-cent increase that's linked to the General Fuel Levy and the Road Accident Fund that was announced by Finance Minister Tito Mboweni during his budget speech last month. That will come into effect in April. Now, Layton Beard is the spokesperson for the AA and he joins us now to talk about this. Layton, good morning. Good to speak to you again. Welcome to Morning Live.
Yeah, it's been a while. Thank you, Sakina. Good to be with you and your viewers as well.
So let's just check. Is this the highest fuel increase since at least mid-2020?
It is the highest since then, and obviously when we factor in the fuel levies, it's going to be very steep. I just want to make 2 points, Sakina. First of all, I mean, the AA doesn't set the fuel price. We don't adjust that. That's done by the Department of Minerals and Energy. And the second is when you look at something like 95 unleaded petrol up in Gauteng, the northwest inland, we're going to be paying around 17 Rand 48. That's our forecast from the AA when we go into April. That certainly is in record territory, and it's very, very expensive. It's coming at a time when electricity is going to become more expensive, when public transport's are going to become more expensive, and because of this increase to fuel, which has knock-on effects on various other sectors, there is a likelihood that other products are also going to become more expensive. April is not going to be a great month.
And then, of course, these are projections, these are estimates. Unfortunately, Layton, the possibility exists that it could be worse if you look at the rand or international oil prices that, of course, fluctuate. And if we don't see a sharp reversal, that picture could possibly deteriorate.
Yeah, the two main drivers of the fuel price in South Africa are international petroleum prices and the rand-US dollar exchange rate. We've seen over the last couple of weeks there's been a steep increase in the international petroleum price. The rand has been relatively stable to an extent. It was at one point at 15 Rand 30. It's now around about 14 Rand 90. So it has strengthened a little bit, but not enough to offset those really big increases to the international petroleum prices, international oil prices. And unless we see those oil prices coming down, Sakina, this prediction that we've made is going to hold. And as you say, it could actually be worse depending on what happens with the rand over the next couple of weeks, and obviously depending on what happens with that oil price going in the next couple of weeks. So I think that we wouldn't want to scaremonger, but the outlook for April is not great, and I think that people need to be aware of it. And the reason we are doing this obviously is to give people fair warning so that they can understand that they need to budget properly for their April fuel expenses.
So, looking at the moment, as you said, it could of course change, but the estimate at the moment is about 90 cents per litre increase for petrol, 66 cents for diesel, and then 62 cents per litre for illuminating paraffin. But this, of course, and very importantly, Layton, excludes the General Fuel and Road Accident Fund levies that were announced by Finance Minister Tito Mboweni. So why, at this stage, is it exclusive of that, and what are we likely to look at when we increase all of those?
Yeah, very good point. And I think just adding on to that gas figure, that illuminating paraffin figure, we're going into winter, so there's going to be high demand for that. People use that for heating, for cooking, for lighting, especially in the winter months. So, that's going to have a severe impact on people who use that gas. And we know from experience that those are the poorest in our communities. The increases to the levies is something that we are very concerned about. We did write a letter to the minister. We have publicly urged the minister not to increase those levies. When you add those levies to the current predictions that we've got, you're looking at about Rand 17 to the price of petrol, around about Rand to the price of diesel. That's going to push that fuel, the petrol price, the unleaded 95 inland, to around 17 Rand 48 a litre, which is enormous. That really is record territory. The diesel price is going to go up to about 16 Rand. Again, very, very high. So, when we look at these prices, Sakina, and we say, please, let's not increase the fuel levies, we are looking at the picture from the sense of how much is this going to add to the misery of the people who use these fuels. And it really is going to be a big impact. R6.10 plus of every litre of fuel is going to taxes in South Africa. And our view is that is some place where the government has a bit of wiggle room, because the international petroleum prices and the Rand-US dollar exchange rate have a lot of extenuating factors that influence them. But the taxes, we feel, are something that the government can manage. And we are concerned about how this is all going to play out over April and going into May, because obviously end of April is when a lot of people will realize that these increases have had a big impact on our budgets.
R6.10 on levies and taxes is quite a lot. How does that compare internationally, Layton?
But there are some countries that pay taxes on their fuel. When you look at a comparison, there are countries that do charge a levy, not as high as what we are charging. We are charging between 35 and 40% for every litre of fuel that goes to taxes. And I think, put that in perspective, if you were to go to some of our neighbouring countries that buy their fuel from South Africa, they don't add levies or taxes to their fuel. So they're buying it from us at a specific price, and they are selling it without those taxes. So what I'm saying is that you will get cheaper fuel in a place like Namibia, who buys its fuel from South Africa because they don't add those taxes to it. We're not opposed to the taxes. I think what we would like to see is that they are brought down to an extent where they don't have such a huge impact on the fuel price. We are concerned, Sakina, that when those levies are increased, and we see a month like March where the price is going to go up very significantly, that's going to be a huge increase everything in. It has a knock-on effect. The manufacturing sector uses diesel, the agricultural sector uses fuel. So when those input costs go up, they passed on through the value chain going down. So everybody, not only motorists, but every consumer is affected by them. It's a big concern for us, and that's why we urge the Minister not to increase those levies. Unfortunately, they have been increased, and as we can see now, it's all going to combine to give us a really bad-looking picture going into April.
So, speaking of those levies, just sticking with that for a moment, what does government actually use the money from those taxes for?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think when people look at the General Fuel Levy, there is an assumption that is used for something related to transport or roads, but it goes back into the general fiscus. And we're talking, somewhere in the region of 120 billion rand a year that is collected through that tax. That money gets placed in the national coffers, and National Treasury can disperse it any way it sees fit. It can be used for books, it can be used for clinics, it can be used for whatever the government wants to use it for. It can also obviously be used for transport or transport-related expenses, but it doesn't have to be earmarked for that. The Road Accident Fund Levy, obviously, which compensates people in the event of crashes, that's where that money goes. So that's where those two big taxes go to. Our view is that this needs an urgent review. We would like to have some sort of a discussion around, are these taxes useful? I mean, they obviously bring in a lot of money for government, but we would like to see a situation where we can discuss how the increases and the impact can be managed better.
Speaking of, is there anything that government can do that you can think of immediately, Layton, as in low-hanging fruit to turn the situation around, or at least take some of that financial burden off the ordinary South African consumer, who is, of course, already battling through very tough economic times?
Yeah, I think from our point of view, the levies that are placed on fuel is a very good starting point in terms of the wiggle room that government has. As I said earlier, Sakina, when you look at the fuel price, the Rand-US dollar exchange rate is determined, by geopolitical events that happen locally and internationally. Obviously, the local economy will play into that, but the international oil prices, again, out of the hands of the South African government. The taxes is the one area where we think government does have some play, and that's where we think a discussion around how that is used and managed can be held, and how we can deal with it better for the sake of, obviously all consumers in South Africa, but specifically those when these go up who suffer the most.
Layton Beard, thank you so much for speaking to us. Layton Beard is from the AA and talking to us about the expected increase in the fuel price and, of course, some of the knock-on effects that this will have as well. And that speaks to our question of the day as well. What are your thoughts on this, given that we are expected to see this very significant increase in the price of fuel? There's the question. South Africa's biggest fuel price hike since mid last year. That's expected to come into effect next month. What are your thoughts on all of this at Morning Live SABC? Well, time now.